What is up, everyone? Sean here, and welcome to another episode of the Hawke Talks here. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty relevant topic here when it comes to fighting games. And this year, I feel like this, for when it comes to fighting games, was the year of guest characters, at least. And especially if you're even counting stuff from a couple years ago with Mortal Kombat X and the first Injustice game, of course, and what have you. So today's topic is, are guest characters necessary for fighting games? Now, this is going to be a difficult question to answer directly. I kind of want to just like elaborate, kind of stretch this out a bit for other fighting games. But before I'm going to flesh this whole topic out for this video, let's establish what a guest character is, at least I guess in my opinion. So a guest character to me is a character that's entering into a game that's completely different, and that character is from a completely different franchise. So for example, let's just say Super Smash Brothers, for example. If you include someone from ARMS, that's not necessarily a guest character. It's just a brand new character for this for Smash anyway, because you can say that, you know, ARMS is it's part of the Nintendo franchise, so therefore he's just a new character. But a guest character would be someone like Sora. It could be Noctis. It could be Mitsurugi, Heihachi, Ryu's already in there. Who else? Captain Commando, Jin. I'm just naming random characters that come to mind. But point being, these characters are from different companies, different, you know, brands or franchises, from different consoles, even so you can say. So those definitely are guest characters for this fighting game anyway. This year alone, we had a number of exciting announcements for guest characters for these major fighting games, such as Tekken 7 especially. We first had Akuma, and then of course he came out at launch for the console version, and then we had Geese Howard announced at EVO, and a lot of people were very much excited for that. And then most recently we had Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, excuse me, being announced for Tekken 7, being able to, somehow fit in the storyline, just talking to Lars, who's always on his phone, comparing to other characters anyway. So I guess it makes sense as to why this even happened in the first place, I guess. But personally, I was disappointed that Kiryu Kazama was not the guest character, but maybe we'll see. We might see more guest characters depending on how many people buy that season pass for Tekken 7. So if you want to support that game, if you want to see more DLC and stuff like that, as Markman said, we will see more. Just buy the season pass and stuff like that in a very recent video featuring the Tekken Awards or something like that. But anyways, are guest characters necessary for fighting games? That's the real question here. And again, it's a pretty difficult thing to answer like directly. I don't want to say it depends on the fighting game, but each individual fighting game, are sometimes expected to have these guest characters. And I guess maybe Tekken 7 now, or Tekken now, is expected to be having these guest characters. But when it comes to NetherRealm, I feel like they are going to be, they are probably going to be expected to have these guest characters. They have a number of guest characters for each for each iteration. Especially we had Mortal Kombat X, which was a previous fighting game from NetherRealm, that had Alien, Predator, Jason Voorhees, and Leatherface, who are iconic characters from the horror movie franchise or genre. And these characters made it into just one fighting game, and that's Mortal Kombat X, which was one of the biggest things in fighting game history, really, or especially for Mortal Kombat history. fans were super excited and all that stuff, and it really, of course, it definitely brings excitement and hype. It generates that hype to whatever fighting game. And let's bring up Smash again, because that brought a lot of excitement with its guest characters alone. We had freaking Mega Man, we had Ryu, and of course we had Cloud. Maybe Bayonetta, but I think she's part of the Nintendo franchise, so it's kind of a semi-guest character. I don't know. It's a very gray line kind of situation there. But I guess you can consider her as a guest character. Excuse me. Bayonetta being in Smash and all, and overall those characters brought in the excitement for Smash 4. I think I think that was some of the biggest cases of hype or whatever that have been brought to a fighting game. Really, I think it just absolutely generated a lot of excitement for that game. Anyway, same thing happened with Tekken 7. Akuma, Geese, and Noctis all brought in excitement for the game, and of course, Injustice 2 had its fair share of guest characters. We had Hellboy, we had Raiden, and Sub-Zero, and of course, most recently we had Ninja Turtles announced for Injustice 2. I feel like I am also missing some characters for guest characters, but point being, all those guest characters definitely brought a lot of excitement for the game as well. It definitely had me excited, at least somewhat, for Tekken 7 when it comes to Geese, Akuma, and Noctis. But although Kiryu would have been nice, but Noctis I will take as well. And of course, the most recently announced Soul Calibur 6 has been revealed at the Game Awards 2017, and that game also had its fair share of guest characters, with Soul Calibur 2 with Link, Heihachi, and Spawn for each console, or from their respective consoles. Link being GameCube, Heihachi PS2, and Spawn Xbox. Even though Spawn isn't really a video game character, he's a comic book character, but whatever. Same color, I guess, green, whatever. But point being, that game had its fair share of guest characters, including Darth Vader and Yoda of all things, which had made no sense even to this day. But then they brought in Ezio Auditore for Soul Calibur 5, which was actually a pretty good pick. Wasn't a particularly exciting pick for me, but I'm sure that it was exciting for at least the Assassin's Creed fans anyway, seeing that character in a cool game like Soul Calibur. And it definitely still generated some sort of excitement and attention to the fighting game. And now, Soul Calibur 6, we're wondering, who's going to make it as a guest character for Soul Calibur 6. We'll have to see if they even will include a guest character, but we'll see about that. Still up in the air. We have no idea. They just revealed only the gameplay and some of the mechanics for it, and we still have yet to see all the other characters for the roster as well. Anywho, that could be a whole separate video. Back onto the topic here, as to our guest characters Necessary. Now, as I mentioned, there's Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and what have you, Injustice, whatever. Those are fine when it comes to guest characters, but I feel like it's unnecessary for King of Fighters and Street Fighter, and also even Guilty Gear, in my opinion anyway. I feel like they've are able to establish themselves with each game, and I feel like they don't really need these guest characters to generate any hype or any of the sort. These are they're definitely strong legacy games that really don't need those things to help carry the game now, at least nowadays. But they have so much legacy under the belt that it's an optional thing. I wouldn't be too mad if they added in a guest character or two for whatever game, Street Fighter 5 or King of Fighters, what, 14, I believe now, and Guilty Gear Revelator 2, I think it's called now. But point being, it's optional. I think it's absolutely optional. It's not necessary for sure for these games. And there are a couple other games that may not need guest characters as well. But these games come to mind when it comes to guest characters being not necessary directly. But I think the one game, or I think games that absolutely do not need guest characters for sure, like I think in fact they shouldn't even include guest characters, is new fighting games. New fighting games that they're trying to enter the scene. I feel like they need to really establish themselves by themselves and not have to rely on characters with legacy coming in as guest characters to help carry the game to be just to be popular amongst all the other fighting games. Oh yeah, I forgot to include Killer Instinct, which had its own fair share of guest characters, but that's besides the point. Now back onto here. I feel like these new fighting games really they have to set foot with their own power. I know it's a weird word to say, but point being, I feel like they need to be able to have their own identity. I think is a better phrase to put it for new fighting games. A big example for new fighting game that's coming up for 2018 is Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's a brand new fighting game from ArcSys featuring Dragon Ball characters with 3v3 combat and all that fun stuff, and it's visually exciting, very appealing. It's got a pretty good roster for right now, at least. It can still use more characters, of course. You can't go wrong with more characters that have these, of course, unique fighting game mechanics or gameplay, of course, for each character. That would be awesome. They could include Great Saiyaman. They could include Emperor Pilaf or something from the classic Dragon Ball. Any of the other characters from Dragon Ball Super, like Jiren, for example. Master Roshi hasn't even made it in there just yet. Mr. Satan or Hercule, whichever dub you come from. There's still characters that that deserve to have that spot in that roster, and of course the female characters need to make it in there as well. Fighting games need female characters as well. But that's a whole nother topic. But but that's just saying, Dragon Ball FighterZ needs female characters as well, just to balance the appeal as well for its audiences. But absolutely not for guest characters here, because first off, you're dealing with a genre that already has plenty of legacy. Dragon Ball, or franchise, excuse me. This anime / manga franchise already has a lot of legacy under its belt, plenty, and in fact, it influenced a lot of other anime and manga series, such as One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, and whatever you can think of, pretty much. Dragon Ball is such a big thing, and of course, on top of that, it's getting its own new fighting game, and I think this is gonna be a very first genuine fighting game in a very long time anyway. 2D fighting with 3v3 combat and all that stuff, kind of similar with Marvel, but have its own. It has its own identity. It definitely has its own identity already, in my opinion, from what I've played. But we have to see how it performs in the competitive scene and just with the consumer market as well. But I think as a new fighting game, it definitely needs to it needs to establish its own identity by itself. And I think it can do it. I think it definitely can do it. It's Dragon Ball Z. People love Dragon Ball Z, of course, and it's got very exciting fighting mechanics already. So I think those alone will be able to help establish its identity for the FGC, and not only that, for the casual consumer audiences. It already has plenty enough to do for a game anyway. It has a story mode, blah blah blah, what have you. But guest characters, Absolutely not, because it's, you know, a brand new fighting game, and again, it needs to really be able to make its own mark within the genre here. And you know, and that goes to the rest of all the new fighting games. You know, it should be able to carry itself. You know, that's how it's you know, that's how it's a measurement of how it deserves to stay within the genre of fighting games anyway. If you know, if this brand new fighting game is gonna come out and already throws in a guest character in there, it kind of tells you that they're really trying to squeeze out as much as possible. To kind of it's kind of a desperate attempt, really, in my opinion, anyway. But you know, I can understand, you know, when it comes to people who love, you know, these guest characters in their fighting games. You know, I completely understand that. Crossovers are definitely something very exciting. I love crossovers and all that stuff, but when it comes to brand new games, I think brand new games in general need to be able to land its mark by themselves. Again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but especially with fighting games, they just need to really, you know, rely on themselves without you know, guest characters, especially if these guest characters come from, you know, big legacy franchises, you know. But if it's a game that already establishes itself, then I think it's optional. I think you know, I don't want to say no completely, but it's definitely optional. Absolutely not necessary though. So you know, it's fine if, you know, Street Fighter 5 stays just Street Fighter characters. Same with King of Fighters. Same with Guilty Gear, of course. And I guess you can throw in BlazBlue if you want. Yeah. And of course, you know, you can't really count Marvel vs. Capcom because it's a game about Marvel and Capcom, you know what I mean? But if they include someone from a completely different, you know, franchise or whatever, then yeah, that's a guest character, of course. But I think, you know, overall, the answer is for when it comes to legacy games like Street Fighter, Tekken, all that stuff, it's optional. I think it's very optional. I think a couple of them are going to be expected to have guest characters from now on, like maybe Tekken, but Soul Calibur is expected to have it. Injustice or NetherRealm fighting games are expected to have them because they've always come out with a ton of number of guest characters. So I think they are, you know, I think it's safe to say that they are expected to have these characters in each iteration. So there is that. But you know, when it comes to, again, new fighting games, I think they really need to you know, be able to establish themselves by themselves. So I think that's like pretty much my answer for it. I know it's like it's not a direct yes or no, but I guess it's a no for new fighting games, but optional maybe kind of answer for the games that already have legacy in there. So but definitely Dragon Ball Fighters, I think it's absolutely not necessary. Like, no, I say no to that. But anyways, maybe, I don't know, we'll have to see if they include Soul Bad Guy or something from Arc Sys, the Guilty Gear fighting games. You know, fine, you know, I'm okay with it, I guess, but I think it absolutely doesn't need any guest characters at all. But anyways, thank you guys so much. This has been my overall thought and opinion about guest characters being necessary for fighting games. It was a pretty fun topic to think about. I kind of wanted to answer this for a while, but I was busy with the holiday and stuff like that, and glad I was able to make a video for this. So thank you guys so much. If you have any thoughts about this whole topic, feel free absolutely to drop your thoughts, opinion, or anything like that for, you know, guest characters for fighting games. If you think, do you think it's necessary at all, or do you love seeing guest characters? Do you always expect to have guest characters in fighting games overall? Leave me those thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to check them out. And also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As always, it really helps out, and of course, I always highly appreciate it. It definitely helps out the channel. And of course, always check out the links in the description box that has all the social media stuff, including Twitter and Twitch, blah blah blah. You can name it. So if you haven't already, check them out and all that stuff. And again, this has been the Hawke Talks episode of guest characters being necessary for fighting games. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.